The 308 is road worthy, and we're going to let Mrs. Wizard take this thing for a spin. I've already driven it a little bit, but I'm going to let her see what she thinks about the car. Let's get inside and go for a cruise, guys. Let's get started. Here we are, guys. We're finally driving the Ferrari. Mrs. Wizard is driving it down the street. We can't really go fast with it or do anything crazy because it hasn't been tuned yet, but at least we can take it down the road and kind of see how it feels driving it. How does it feel, Mrs. Wizard?
Finally. It's amazing.
Too bad we can't let it scream, but I'm going to be taking it to a tuner that Tyler from Hoovy's Garage has used, and we'll talk about that when we get back to the shop. But we're finally cruising into 308.
Yay!
And the dirty windshield. How did it do, Mrs. Wizard?
It did amazing.
It didn't break down.
No.
Here we go into the shop. So it is running and driving. It goes down the road just fine, and like I mentioned while we're cruising, we can't get on it and really go fast with it because I don't want to burn the engine up. We have set up with Polk Performance, who did some tuning for Hoovy's Garage on his Superbird, I think on another car or two. We're going to have him go through this and dial it in and make sure that it's safe before we get on it and have fun with the car. We don't want to, like I said, burn the motor up. But even as we got to the point where we were ready to take it out for a spin, we still had some hiccups. Number one, it wasn't charging the battery, and I don't think it ever was charging the battery, even during the entire filming of Car Trek when this was on Car Trek. I looked up a new alternator and it was $1,200, and I just very coyly said, nope, no, I'm not spending that. I know it's a Ferrari, I know that. But I know that I could make a different alternator work, and we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But the biggest thing was the brakes would work one time, but then the next time it would go to the floor. You would have no brakes. We definitely don't want to take a nice Ferrari out and chance maybe the brakes will work, maybe they won't. And we discovered what was wrong. Let me get the front bonnet opened. Let's get the bonnet open. You see the spare tire is missing, but what we found out was that the master cylinder, which as you can see, as opposed to most cars you're familiar with, it sits sideways. The brakes are this way, but the booster and the master cylinder are this way. That way they could fit it under the hood without it sticking up through the hood or the bonnet lid or whatever you want to call it. We got a good used master cylinder for a couple $100. And you can see that it's a nice black one down there. It said it had been resealed recently, and it must have been because it stops very, very well now. Let me show you the old master cylinder. So here's the old master cylinder. You can see where the reservoirs went in. There was some trash in there. And I believe that the umbrella seals inside were just failing. Sometimes they would catch and hold, and other times they wouldn't. We flushed the entire system and put the good used master cylinder on it, cleaned out the reservoir, bled the brakes, and it had good brakes all the time. So now that problem has been solved. So there was another problem with the charging system. We'll show you that. I'll get it on the lift. And once we have it on the lift, I have a question for you guys concerning the exhaust. Let's get it up in the air. So like I mentioned, ever since I've had the car, and even during filming of Car Trek, the alternator has never worked. This is the original alternator here. It's a Bosch unit. And like I mentioned, I looked one up and it was clear over $1,000. This is a 55 amp. And several people comment, and even Daniel even agreed with their comments, is that we need to have more power than that to run was it the fuel injection system, everything?
Yeah, all in the AFI.
So I got to looking at an old GM 10SI alternator off of a late 80s Chevy truck like we have here. And I was like, that is almost identical to the Bosch unit. So we did some test fitting and realized we could do some milling here on the milling machine. And this is a one-wire system, very similar to the Bosch unit. We took the pulley off of this Bosch unit. It has the really skinny belt, really tiny belt. And amazingly, it fit perfectly on the 10SI alternator and bolted right up. And I did the milling, and then Daniel's son did a lot of the fitting and figuring out what needs to happen. Let's go ahead and take a look under the car and see how it turned out. So that thing turned out pretty good, huh, Daniel?
Yeah.
It bolts right up, and then you were able to figure out the wiring. You got everything hooked up, and it puts out like 14 volts now, huh?
Yeah, 14.2.
And this is a 100 amp alternator, so it's almost double what we had before.
Yeah, you can tell the difference on the car and the idle mainly. The other one was struggling to feed power to the ECU, and the ECU was definitely not letting the car run right.
Yeah, once we got this hooked up, that went away. And you can see the back side, everything bolted up perfectly, the wiring all matched up just like normal. No issues at all with making this work. So I'm a firm believer with these older exotic cars, you don't always have to buy the $5,000 part. Just like on the 456 and also on the 550s, I've done the fuel pump swap with the Kia fuel pump. They work perfect. There's several on the road now, and then that one's running just fine. Those are like $50 a pump, not $1,500 per pump. This alternator was 100 amps, and it cost 80 bucks, not 1,200 bucks. And it bolts right up, and it's perfect. So the next thing we're going to look at, like I mentioned, is the exhaust. And what was your recommendation?
Straight pipes.
Straight pipes.
Straight pipes. It's a Ferrari.
It's going to be like my ears ringing all the time.
Just for a little bit.
Just for a little bit?
Yeah.
But
It is
Mrs.
no muffler Newton.
It is no muffler Newton. It would fit in really well here in Newton with that. But let's take a look under here and see what are we going to do here. Daniel, this whole valance has to come off.
Yes.
You take that all down and we can get to this muffler. I just really don't like that muffler. It sounds like a Volkswagen to me.
Yeah, it's not. I'm pretty sure that's not even the original muffler. It doesn't look like it.
No, I don't think it is. I don't know what it is or what brand or anything.
Yeah, for this year I couldn't tell you too much, but just an upgraded anything will probably sound better.
Yeah, I kind of have the idea that I want to put a Flowmaster on it.
Yeah, I've never heard of Flowmaster on a Ferrari.
That's just the thing. I looked on YouTube, Ferrari Flowmaster. Nobody has ever put a Flowmaster on these. And I think with the awesome Ferrari sound mixed with a Flowmaster could sound really unique and awesome at the same time.
Yeah, well, we'll never know if we don't try it, right? So let's go for it, you know?
We can hook it up. If it sounds like basura, is that what it's? Trash?
Basura.
Trash? Garbage?
Yeah, trash,
basura, yeah. If it sounds like that, then we can change it out and do something else.
Or straight pipe it.
I really love Capristo exhaust. It would sound amazing on this. And Tyler in the past has paid $4 or $5 grand for a kit, but the 308 kit is $7 or $8 grand. I really just can't pull the trigger on $8 grand for a muffler, for an exhaust system. So I'm going to experiment and see what I can come up with. Well, let's get this thing back on the ground. So all the big items have been addressed. This thing is roadworthy. It's running and driving. Actually runs very well. You've done a very good job there, Daniel's son. But there's lots of little things left. As far as getting this thing on the road again, that has been accomplished. That part of the project is done. But the air conditioner has not been hooked up, and we want to take care of that after the tuning is done. But you were mentioning the mirrors. You don't even think there are 308 mirrors, huh?
I have no idea. When it comes to these years, you know, I work mostly with anything newer, you know, 80s, so GTSI and up. I saw maybe one GTB, so I can't remember, but these mirrors, you can't see anything out of them. There's no adjustment that you can do where you can actually use it. So these definitely need to be replaced. You know, the ones that I know of are the ones that go up and then to the side. They're a little bit taller, so you can actually see out of them, and, you know, they're a lot better than these.
Yeah, those are kind of wonky. They just don't seem like they ever get a good angle.
Yeah, and also I tightened this as tight as it would get and still floppy.
still
It still
floppy.
bounces around when you drive, which you don't
Yeah.
want that.
We need to get a rear view mirror in, and you said with sun visors?
The sun visors as well.
Sun
Yeah.
visors. And then the radio is working, so that part is done. The turn signal stalk, we need to figure that out. It's cracked, so we need to see if we can glue it back on. I really don't want to buy another one. They were like, what, $2,000 for a turn signal switch?
Yep.
$2,000.
Yep.
So we'll see what we can do. It works, just the stalk is broken off. I'll see if I can fix that somehow or another. We need to finish up inside the wheel well area, get a spare tire. There's also the chip up front on the chin spoiler that needs to be fiberglass and repainted. The rest of the paint, I'm just going to clean it and just use it as is. This is not a museum quality 308. It's just going to be a fun driver car. So let's head on back to the engine bay. So I want to have the factory air cleaner. It would look really nice under here. I don't have it. I never have had it. And I've looked for one. One time I found one. It was over $2,000 and I just couldn't do it. And I should have. I should have just bought it. You said they're very hard to find?
Well, everybody's restoring these cars. They're big money now, so.
Yeah. I kind of kick myself for that. But I do have the Weber kind of a K&N style air filters that came with the car. And luckily, they fit right on to these TWM Borla throttle bodies. Just like that. Obviously, there's 4 of them. So on the hatch, they actually, I believe, cut some of the sheet metal so these would stick up into the area and bring fresh air in. And maybe I'll just run it that way, but I can't send it to the tuner with just no air cleaners at all. So we will definitely be putting these on to get it tuned, and then I'll worry about it after that is done. So it starts every time, it runs every time, it hasn't stalled, it doesn't die, it's got good oil pressure, everything is going very well as far as the engine running. We just need to get it tuned. And like I said, a bunch of small things on the car. The interior, you guys have seen, it's been done, it's finished. Just lots of little things here or there. And after that's said and done, then we'll put the hatch on, which they look really good with the hatch. It looks kind of goofy like this right now, but we're getting close to, I can start enjoying the car, taking it to car shows, take it to Cars and Coffee and things of that nature. And maybe Daniel can borrow it when he goes on dates with some girls here in Newton.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay. And I think you said one of the last things is like the port that was used for the coolant temperature sensor we used for the ECM.
Yes.
So now we need to find a place to put the one for the actual gauge.
Yeah, unfortunately this gauge is not compatible with the one that we installed, so I can't really tee off it, so I have to add a whole new sensor just for the gauge.
Yeah. So that will take care of that. So we've come a long way. It's been in the shop for a long time. You guys have seen it in the background. And some people mentioned it'll never run again. It runs again, it drives again, it's happy again. It runs so much better than it used to. It runs smooth, just like a bumblebee buzzing when it's idling. That's the way these are supposed to sound, not sound like a Subaru. So if you're curious what kind of tools that we use to work on this thing, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. I get a small cut and really appreciate it. And make sure to hit the subscribe button because there's going to be more of these videos as we finish up the little loose ends and also more of those videos on the bus to come. Thanks for watching. How did it do, Mrs. Wizard?
It did amazing.
It didn't break down.
No.